Metaphors tell you what you value. And when you lead people, when you engage people who have chosen to work with you, and when you act as a host, the values that you treasure kind of show on the surface in your language, in your action, in the way you talk with people. This is the reason why metaphors are important.
Delighted that you're with us today. I know how much experience you've got in host leadership, and I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself further. So, okay. Good morning, welcome, and thank you for coming, Leah.
So, welcome everybody. I'd like to, I'll minimize that. I'd like to welcome you all with the words of Henry Nouwen, a Dutch philosopher, priest, professor, teacher. So what he says about guests, that they're carrying precious gifts with them, which they're eager to reveal to a receptive host. So I'd like to welcome all my guests, and I do believe that you will show to us all the gifts you have brought. We'll go back to the title of the workshop, which is Host Leading, taking a new practical view on leadership. And my best hope is that you will further your interest in host leadership, that you will be inspired by the philosophy of the metaphor and by the practical model we are going to look at. So these are my best hopes for today. And the outcomes of this workshop are that we'll be taking a look at the value of the host leadership metaphor through the lens of your context of action. And then I hope you'll be really inspired to lead in ways that bring people together. And then I hope you'll be able to use, to your practical benefit, to the benefit of the people you work with, the step forward and step back dance of the host leader. And it might be that you begin to adopt the new roles and positions of engagement. And now we'll go into breakout rooms with the following tasks. Please say hello to your roommates. And can you mention in your breakout room 3 of the things you already know about the topic of the workshop, which is host leadership? And then, after you've done that, can you say which 2 of the outcomes are perhaps most important for you personally? Welcome back, everybody. Did you discover a lot of things you know about the topic already? I hope you did. Okay, so what we're going to do today is that we're first going to explore the metaphor of host as leader and leader as host, because the practices of host leadership are based on a sound philosophy coming first from solutions focus and then having roots in the metaphor of hosting. Then we're going to talk about the host leadership model, which actually operationalizes, acts on 2 steps, 4 positions, and 6 roles. And I think this model, very simple, 2, 4, 6, will be useful for the work you do and for achieving more of what you want to do. And meanwhile, in the process of looking at the metaphor, untangling the model, you're going to be involved in many different activities, some of them happening in the main room and some of them happening in breakout rooms. And I've been involved in developing practices of host leadership for 7 or 8 years. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see Mark McCurgle's and Helen Bailey's first book, Host, 6 New Roles of Engagement. And then a couple of years ago, another book came, which is a collection of practices and the experience of people who do develop host leadership further. So these are the 2 books which I think are a valuable resource for everybody. And at the bottom of the screen, you see the website address of the host leadership community. You're welcome to join. Now, I can say that host leadership arose from the need to take a new look at leadership. When I came to the office, to this office where I'm hosting this workshop for, on the table, on an empty table, I found a magazine, a Bulgarian one called Manager. And the whole magazine is devoted to leadership, I discovered, very topical. And why do people need to look at leadership in a new way? Because times are different, because change happens all the time. And I've just formulated 4 points here, which are relevant to what is going to come next. So communication is faster, connections are greater, the markets are global, and I'm sure you're familiar with the abbreviation VUCA world. The world is no longer still. The world is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And in order to be able to lead, no matter whether one is an educator or a manager or a CEO or a trainer or a facilitator, one needs to be able to respond to the volatility, to the uncertainty and complexities of this world. Very briefly, but it is a time for a new look at leadership. If we think it's kind of blasphemy to talk to this community about problems, I think, but we can think of problems in many ways. One of the ways is to call them tame and wicked problems. The tame problems are the ones which are complicated, but there is an answer. If we analyze, if we try to solve the problem, if we look carefully into the problem, if we consult people, we can solve the problem. The wicked problems are a different matter. For example, if we talk of extremism or terrorism or famine or the pandemics, as it were, so they're interwoven in the environment. We don't know where we are. There are no boundaries which we can choose to cross or not to cross. There are many links. There is no easy answer. Perhaps there is no answer at all. And in this world which abounds in wicked problems, we have to work in a dynamic and responsible way. So I dare say that host leadership is not really the answer, but an answer to the way we live in this world where wicked problems abound. And just to say and to summarize that the meaning of leadership has changed, and you will see how it has changed in my further talk. But to summarize it right at the beginning is that leadership is about building relationships, and leadership is about engagement. Engaging people with the task in hand, with the problem in hand, with the way forward. And engagement, I understand engagement as awareness of what is to be done, commitment, taking action, and participating. And this is where host leadership is really, really novel. In this management magazine, I saw it on the table this morning. I quickly thumbed through the pages, and every article, every piece was about the leader, about the skills the leader needs to have and develop. While in the host leadership metaphor and the model, almost everything is about building relationships and generating engagement. So I like to say why metaphors are important. For example, if a business person says that business is a battlefield, and I've seen many of those, what will it be like to work for this kind of person? If business is a battlefield, it will hear arms clattering, will hear battles, it will be war. Then I had colleagues when I was a teacher who would say, education is a thorny road. Imagine the kids and the pupils and the students in this classroom. If the teacher imagines education as a thorny road. And here in my country, we had a minister of culture who loved to say, all the time I saw him on television, he would say that our cultural heritage is a quagmire, is a bog. So what do you think of the cultural heritage of this country and the way the Minister of Culture manages that? I'm not sure we need to have a Minister of Culture, but anyway, not the one at least who thought that our heritage was a quagmire. So metaphors are important because they tell us what is important and how to act, right? So can you quickly, in 30 seconds, 40 seconds, write in the chat box what metaphors for leaders you can think of? Conductor, savoir, coach, barkeeper, followed, prescriber, mentor, hero, enabler, leader is like a lighthouse. Very nice. Inspiration, captain, friend, someone, parent, okay, magician, oh yeah, I love that. So I've chosen, I didn't see a servant, but anyway, I've chosen two metaphors actually, in addition to the host leader. So we are all familiar with Joan of Arc, with Napoleon, and this nameless leader. Images of leaders. Do we have them nowadays? Do we need them nowadays? Leader's hero is the metaphor. And we can see from the image which I have borrowed from Mark McCurgo. The leader, the hero, is at the top of the pyramid and everybody else is below. Oops. Everybody else is below. And because leadership, our position is that leadership is about engagement. Leadership is about a relationship. And if we are talking relationship, we need to have more than one person. So if on the one side of relationship we have the leader, the others are the rescued people. Maybe. And do we want to be rescued? Probably not. Not all the time, I guess. So leader's hero is a good metaphor. And leaders nowadays can be seen as heroes, and people like to think of leaders as heroes. In my country, this is quite popular. You see your CEO as a hero who is there to save you and to show you the way. But I don't think that in this age of connectivity, in this age of interconnectedness, a leader can be a hero all the time. And then we have another metaphor, leader as servant, which came as a pendulum, as a reaction. The pendulum swung back as a reaction to the leader as hero metaphor, leader as servant. And I was telling John that when I was reading the news this morning, there was an interview with Angela Merkel, and the journalist asked her, it seems you're wearing the same clothes all the time, or the same type of clothes. And she said, yes, I'm not a fashion model. I'm a public servant. So there's a lot of food for thought in this metaphor. But let's think of the relationship again. Who is on the other side? Who is the opposite number? Servant, and then master. And it is counterintuitive, I think, to be thinking of the leader as servant and the rest of the people who work with the leader as masters. And also, in terms of society, I don't think it's a desirable metaphor to think of servants. I don't think that young people know about servants very much. I'm not sure about that. So leader as host is a metaphor which kind of combines the good qualities of leader as hero, or the good qualities of the metaphor, and leader as servant. And the opposite number of host is a guest, hosts and guests. You can't have a host without guests, yeah? So leader as host is much more than leader as hero, leader as servant. And we shall see how come. How come leader as host is a much better metaphor than the other two. To make things clear for this workshop only, I understand host as a person who receives or entertains guests. It's a much richer meaning, a word much richer in meaning, but for the present workshop, I think this will do. A host is a person who receives and entertains guests. A minute ago, I said that there's a lot more to host than to hero and servant. One reason is that hosting goes back to ancient times. In ancient times, we shall see how it comes, but in ancient times and in harsh conditions, hosting was key for survival. If you lived in a desert, or if you lived in cold climates, if you refused hospitality to people, to travelers, these people might die. This is why hosting was key to survival. And then I like to tell this story, Abraham's story from the Bible. Probably some of you know it. I didn't know it well, so I had to find out how come Abraham's story was a foundational story for hospitality. So Abraham was sitting in the shade of his tree, and when he raised his eyes, he saw 3 travelers. They were 3 visitors. He quickly jumped, invited the 3 travelers to the shade, welcomed them, and his servants brought water for them to wash their feet, and he asked his wife, Sarah, and the servants and the people with him to prepare food. While the three travelers were eating, Abraham was sitting to the side, waiting for them to finish. As it turned out, they were not your usual travelers. They were not just three people traveling through the desert. They were angels. And they indeed brought Abraham and Sarah a gift. And the gift was the news that they were going to have a baby. Abraham was 120 years old, and Sarah was 70 something. So this was quite unusual news. But indeed, in 9 months, Isaac was born. So why am I telling you this story? Because the guests, the travelers, they brought a gift and the news about the baby. And what was Abraham? A servant, a host, both in one. So welcoming, sustaining people, welcoming their gifts is a foundational tale of society. And this is why the hosting metaphor is so familiar. In modern times, we are not going to talk about these really famous leaders, but in modern times, we have really, really excellent leaders. Nelson Mandela, Chris Bonington, the Alpine leader, and Chris Anderson, the host of TED. So we've all heard of them. And also in everyday terms, we have all hosted a party. We have all been guesting. So hosting and guesting is quite familiar. It's intuitive. It's in our genes. So this is one other advantage of the host as leader metaphor. I don't know how many of you come from the UK and how many of you are familiar with history, but there is an excellent story told. I learned it from Warren Bennis, a guru in leadership studies, about two British prime ministers, Gladstone and Disraeli, at the end of the 19th century. When people were invited to dinner by Gladstone, they would say to themselves, Gladstone is charming, the most brilliant, the most intelligent person I have ever met. And when they had been invited to dinner by Disraeli, they would go home and they would say, oh my, I'm really the most charming, the most intelligent, the most brilliant mind ever. And then the question arises, who is a better host? Who was a better host? Gladstone and Disraeli. Of course, they were good prime ministers for their own times, but Disraeli was the one who was creating space for his guests to show their talent, to show their gifts. So I hope you enjoyed the stories. And then time comes for a new activity in breakout rooms. Now, after what you heard, and after what you talked about in the first breakout room, what would you say if you had to explain to a colleague why you think a new metaphor for leadership is important? What would you say if you had to explain that to a colleague? And in your writing pads, could you write a sentence or two, something that attracts your attention in what others say, in what you said? And again, I think I was in a breakout room and I heard something there which I hadn't heard before, that for a metaphor, the host as leader, leader as host metaphor, to become really yours, to take ownership of the metaphor, you somehow have to feel it with your body. And to feel it with your body, your mind has to know that it is useful. It kind of breaks out your activity in small steps. And this is how we are going to continue. And another opinion which I really loved was that the host leadership metaphor suggests the idea of community, not just the leader. It has to be this, the leader has to be that, the leader needs to be tall, the leader needs to be beautiful, or this kind of thing. But it suggests community, a communal feeling. And this is what I like really, really very much. Okay, so we are going to go now to the more practical aspect of the workshop. I'm looking at the time as well. But before we do that, there will be 2 minutes in your writing pads and yourself. Think of a personal leadership challenge you are facing right now. So it's not a leadership challenge you managed to overcome or to resolve or were successful in, like 2 years ago or a week ago. A leadership challenge which is current, which you're facing right now. And in your writing pad, just make a few notes. Who is it about? In addition to yourselves, what is it about? When, how, why? The parameters of the challenge. We are going to work with this later, so this is why it is important to have a couple of notes now. Let's continue now. And again, a definition, because we don't really have a day and a half, we have an hour and a half. So what is a host leader for the purpose of this workshop and more even, not just for this workshop? This is a host leader, someone who engages. We have the key word, engages. And then in what? In a purposeful endeavor. This is the leadership model. 2 steps, 4 positions, and 6 roles. And I really love it because I've seen models, I've seen various models, and I've admired the complexity of them. Arrows in all directions and semicircles and circles. And when you look at it, you become dizzy because the model is so complex to grasp, complicated to grasp. While this one is simple. 2 steps, 4 positions, and 6 roles. Now let's go to breakout rooms for another set of 5 minutes.
Okay.
So can you give them names? I'm really curious to find out whether you can give them names and which one speaks to you for one reason or other. I wonder what names you have given to the positions. Have a look, have a quick look, and then we'll go to the other components of the model. So the first one is in the spotlight, when the leader is up front in full view, everybody is looking at them. And for this position, one needs to prepare, to really prepare well. Then the other one is with the guests. And this position is public, again, because you are there with everybody. But it's more intimate. It gives you an opportunity to talk with people, with individuals or with 2 people at the same time. And this is an opportunity to meet people, as Mark says, in their walk, to connect with people. The third position is in the gallery. in the balcony, as John said, and you're not in public view anymore. And this gives you the chance to take a look at the big picture, to see the forest rather than the trees, and be ready to jump when there's a need to do so, when there is a critical point. And the fourth position is the one in the kitchen, which is private, or you may be there with a friend, with a trusted friend, or with a mentor, with a coach, where you do preparation, you do more intimate work. So these are the four positions. And I'm going to take you back to your notes, your personal leadership challenge. Just think about who, when, how, and think in terms of the positions, what positions you might want to take as the challenge develops and as you act on the challenge. So we're returning to the two steps of the host leadership model, the step forward and the step back. A key question for the host leader is, shall I step forward or step back next? So this next, the final word in the question, is important because it suggests dynamics. It suggests that we can take a step forward and then take a step back and then forward again and then as the need arises. Leaders as heroes, they always step forward. They know how to do that. And I think leaders nowadays know how to do that as well. And the question is, how shall I act when I'm stepping forward? And when I step forward, in which role, in what position? So everything in this stepping forward is active. It suggests action. The change of roles, the change of positions. And then when we are in the step forward position, the first question we have in our mind is, how do I step back? And when I step back, why do I do that? What am I allowing to happen? And stepping back for some people means switching off. I'm no longer playing a role. I'm no longer there. I'm taking a rest. In fact, it isn't. In fact, stepping back means I'm on the alert. I'm constantly watching what is going on, ready to respond as action develops. And in the breakout room I was in, the question was, my guests, speaking figuratively as a metaphor, are not really willing, are not really welcoming to when I'm stepping back. They don't like it. They like me there in the spotlight. They like me to tell them what to do. So in cases like this, and I think they are not an exception what I heard in the breakout room, I do a lot of intercultural coaching, with people, the so-called globetrotters. These top positions in in transnational organizations who either come to Bulgaria, they're from other countries, or Bulgarians go to other countries. And the complaint I hear from CEOs when they come to the Bulgarian branches of the companies is, people want me to say that you're going to do that, you're going to do this. And this is their main issue when they come and lead their team in Bulgaria. So this issue is not an exception. I've come across quite a lot, and the step back is probably the beginning of an answer to this issue. So there's a range of possibilities for leading. It's not stepping forward, taking a front position, and stepping back, going to the back of this continuum. And the question is not either or. I'm stepping forward, full stop. I'm stepping back, full stop. The question is, when are the times to make for each end? You see, so it's a range of possibilities. It's not the extreme ends of the continuum. And now we come to the 6 roles in the host leadership models. And here the play, what was the English word? The pun, the play of words is beautiful. From rules to roles. Rules is something that you observe, and rules, you're not supposed to break rules. I've worked for a big transnational organization like the British Council, and when I go back, my impression is that the rules were written and were being written after something has happened. So the rules follow what happened, while roles, the main difference between roles and rules is that something you do at the moment when the time comes. And roles, taking different roles, performing different roles, is something really dynamic. You're on the stage, you take front stage, and then when the need comes, you go out of the stage, you're not in full view, and then you come onto the stage again. And the question is when to do a particular role and when not to do it. And the beauty of the host leadership metaphor is that we know how to host because it is in our genes, actually. Whether we are good hosts or not, it's a different question, but we have all hosted parties, we have all facilitated workshops, especially you now in this workshop. And these are the names of the 6 roles. Initiator, inviter, space creator, gatekeeper, connector, and co-participator. And we're going to go into breakout rooms now again. And there's a question for you and a task for you, but if you look only at the titles of the roles, you will see that all of them connote with engagement and commitment. You initiate something, and initiating doesn't come out of the blue. You listen, you see what is needed, and you decide whether to initiate action or not. Invite even more so, you invite others to your endeavor. When you create the space, you create it for people to come and feel comfortable or less comfortable in the space. Gatekeeper, again, you are standing at the gate and you're waiting, you're welcoming, waiting for people to come and welcoming them. Connect is obvious, the engagement connotation, and co-participator is also obvious. So in the next breakout room, so which of the 6 roles grabs your attention? Which and why? What drew your attention? And how can you connect the image and the name of the role to some of your personal experience? We have 10 minutes left. And surely what we are not going to do now, but I have it in my slides, is a breakdown of what one does in every role, in each of the roles. Stepping forward, and broken down into stepping forward and stepping back as initiators, as inviters, as space creators. John told me that there was a question and also it's time for questions, by the way. There was a question in the breakout room that he was in. Why do we have to use metaphors? Why? Why do we have? Some people like metaphors, some people don't like metaphors. For some people, metaphors work. For some people, metaphors don't work. I'm one of those for whom metaphors work. They tell me a lot. This is one reason. Another reason is that host leadership, leader as host, host as leader, is a metaphor. And all the roles, all the positions can be referred to hosting and can be referred to leading. And making the parallel between leading and hosting, you make each one of leading and hosting, you make it clearer. Metaphors tell you what you value. And when you lead people, when you engage people who have chosen to work with you, and when you act as a host, the values that you treasure kind of show on the surface in your language, in your action, in the way you talk with people. This is the reason why metaphors are important. Yeah? So will there be anybody who would like to share the challenge they have picked out of their many challenges? I'd love to hear somebody.
I have one challenge. When you see the leader and the host, what for I am really responsible as a host? Concerning the outcome of the wonderful party or the good teamwork or whatever is coming out of it. So, because I'm thinking of if I'm creating all this, it needs a response and a connection and a balance, and it's not just, and this I see as the big difference also between leader and host, that as a host I can bring the framework, but what is in between, this is a question and a challenge to me.
Christian, could I ask you to give a name to your challenge? Can you give it a name?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. And which of the roles and positions, what position in a specific challenge, something needs to be done? You have listened to a call, something needs to be done, and you decide to respond to this call. And responsibility is your challenge. Which of the roles would you like to start with, responding to the challenge? In what position?
I could do it, for example, as an initiator. So if someone is asking something, I can initiate something. Yeah, but I don't see me as the one that I am the only person who continues it. I can also invite people. So, but when they are sitting at the table, this is, what can I do that then the others continue and I can perhaps go to the kitchen and think or rest or whatever I would like to do at this moment.
Yes. Okay. Is there anybody who can answer the question Christian asked? What can I invite people to do in this situation? Somebody asks a question and Christian steps into the role of inviter. And she invites people to do what?
To maybe ask the others, like, is anybody there who has answers to this question or wants to elaborate on this question? To open up the conversation about it in the group?
Yeah. So actually, Christian steps back, and what she has chosen to do is go into the kitchen and leave the table. Yeah. As co-participator, the role of co-participator, perhaps we can stay at the table, but physically step back, kind of lean back and open space for others to give answers, right? Thank you, Vonike. And just one more challenge. I'm so curious, one more challenge, and we'll close the workshop. Yeah, Katrin?
I have the challenge. We started last year in May. We started a network for schools, school workers in solution-focused way. And Tara Gretton from Britain and me, we started this, and we are always preparing the meetings. And we decided to do this for 1 year. So it's in May. We want to pass it on that it's each month, and a different person is the host, and somebody presents something. So we want to encourage everybody to as co-organizers. So this is a challenge because we are a bit afraid that it will maybe be a bit weak. But I think it's a good way to go, and maybe in the position first to go in the kitchen, maybe together with Tara. Yeah. Think about good questions, and then to maybe find another role. I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, in the kitchen, the position in the kitchen, and you are the initiator of this new project. Let's call it a project. Yeah. Have you done anything already? Have you done one small
Yes,
step?
we are meeting once a month, always the 3rd of the month. So it started in the 3rd of May, the Solution Focus World Day. So in 2020, and in 2 months we want to keep it going, but we don't want to be the main persons anymore. We want to have it like in German you say Staffel. You pass it on like Olympia, yeah.
And so, as I understand, you have done one small step, right?
Yeah.
The direction. Has it been successful?
Yes.
How do you know?
People joining each month, and there's always somebody who says, "Oh, I'd like to present something, a topic or something." So we are the hosts already. Yeah, we inviting people. We set up the event like you did today, like John does today, and people joining and people discussing and sharing thoughts, and always one person, not us. Sometimes us, but sometimes somebody else presents something.
Yeah.
But we want to pass the role of inviting and setting up the event. We want to pass it on, so that it stays the same day each month, you know, but it's more a community action.
Thank you, Katrina. Wonderful. I think we can finish here on this high note. John, thank you very much for coming, John, for organizing it and for co-hosting with me. And it's really a challenge. My challenge is how to talk about host leadership in 90 minutes. It's a huge challenge because I love it as a practice. I really love it. And when you love something, you tend to indulge in talking about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you everyone for coming along today. And Leah, what a lovely challenge to have, but there's not enough time. It's a lot worse the other way around. So enjoy. Thank you so much for all your stories, for the really nice way you just led us through it. I found it, I did the host leadership course with Mark quite a few years ago, and it was great to get a refresh from you. So thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you, everyone. Next month, we do, in fact, have Mark McCurger coming along, and he's going to be talking about his village in the city concept and how he uses solution focus in that. So that will be coming out very soon to your computers to tell you about that one. And again, thank you so much and have a great Sunday.